Welcome back to Sister Sit Down. My name's Kasey.
Hey, my name's Kameron.
And today we're sitting down to talk about sex.
Sex, baby.
Let's talk about
you and me.
We're not just talking about sex, though. We're talking about purity culture, how the church approaches it.
Yep.
How our experiences were growing up in the church with our family, and more or less the lack of conversations that we had in our life and how that has shaped us. And if you are in a church or you're in a youth group or you have like this super healthy relationship as a teenager with your family and those people in your life, and you're having those healthy, open discussions, that is so great. And I'm so excited about that. These are just our experiences and the ways that we feel churches should approach this topic. Mm-hmm. We're going to try to be a little bit more organized today.
We
have some notes. And we're going to, we could talk about this topic for what? Like 10 hours?
10 years.
10 years. But we're going to narrow it down to a few topics and try to cover them really well. So would you like to start, Kameron?
Sure. Okay. So once again, kind of reiterating what you said, it's like, and disclaimer, I guess, we'll put this out there. We are not trying to say anywhere at any point during this time that, having sex outside of marriage is totally fine. Mm-hmm. It's not a sin, and all those kind of things. We're not saying that. What we are focusing on is just how the church approaches this topic. Mm-hmm. Like Kasey already said, I know she already said this, but we just want to reiterate that. We're not trying to disagree with anything biblically. We're just saying the way it's discussed can be very harmful. Yeah. So, kind of sorry, I'm looking at my notes. Don't look at me. I'm looking at my notes. But one thing is like, there's so much shame. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, the conversation about sex is so like taboo. Mm-hmm. It's like, you don't talk about it. Mm-hmm. But then once you get married, everybody wants to talk about it. Yeah. And it's just such a shift. It's like, wait, like, is this a good thing? Like, is this a bad thing? Mm-hmm. Like, I'm confused. Mm-hmm. And so, just trying to shift the conversation from shaming young adults, and I don't want to say young kids. You shouldn't be having sex if you're a kid, literally. But shifting the conversation from shame. Yeah. And it's nasty. You shouldn't be doing it. And we're not going to talk about it because you shouldn't be doing it. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to tell you anything about it because you just shouldn't be doing it. Mm-hmm. It's like, more so, let's talk about how these young adults can protect themselves, whether it be physically or emotionally. Mm-hmm. Instead of just the shame aspect of it, let's talk about how they can love themselves and maybe not make some of these choices at the end of the day.
Yeah. I completely agree. I think, especially for people, I'll just put this out there. I didn't save myself for my husband. I was sexually active at 15, which
Good Lord.
What happened to the shame, Kameron? Whoa. Thinking back on that now, though, as a 29-year-old who is having kids, I'm like, oh my gosh, I had no business doing that. But to back up on that, if someone had sat me down and explained to me the beauty and the sanctity of that level of intimacy with another person, I probably would have been like, oh, the kid from second period probably shouldn't be hitting that level of intimacy with him.
Right.
And it's so frustrating, like you said, when the shift from premarital sex to marital sex.
Right.
And nobody wants to talk about it. And then all of a sudden you have, the entire congregation in your face. When are you having babies? Well, exactly. Deborah, I don't know how to have babies because no one ever taught me where anything went. Well, and what was the purpose of sex?
And to me personally, and I'll also put this out there, I technically did not wait till marriage either. Mm-hmm. And I was just hearing this all the time about how you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be doing this. Not that it was just an open conversation that I was doing it or anything, but just hearing, over and over and over again that this is not something you should be doing. Yeah. And then the person wanting to talk about it once you're married, it's like, I don't want to talk to you about this because you never really wanted to even talk about it before.
Yeah.
Whether it just be, you know, educational or just any type of information about it. When there's just a negative conversation about it and there's nothing necessarily positive about it, you don't want to talk about it later on. And so it's like, why are we discussing it in such a negative way? And it's like, I understand, you know, you're not supposed to be doing it for marriage. You're not. I understand that. I get that. But you're not going to really invite somebody in to discuss things with you when there's nothing but shame and condescension. I don't know. I didn't say that word right. Condescension. Oh. It's a lot of S's for Cameron.
Condescension.
Okay. About it. Yes.
Well, and it's hard to make the shift, like the mental shift from, oh, this is super shameful.
Right.
To, oh, this is something really beautiful and it's really intimate and it's something that the Lord has ordained in your marriage, blah, blah, blah. And nobody's going to want to protect or take care of something that is ugly and shameful and sinful.
Yeah.
Like, you're not putting it on the pedestal that it belongs on, because sex is a beautiful thing, and it is a level of intimacy that really is most beautiful between two people who love each other and are committed to each other. And on another note, are not solely focused on their own pleasure.
Exactly.
And I think that is a topic that's also not discussed with young women of faith.
Yeah.
Is that, like, you always hear, be fruitful, multiply, be fruitful, multiply. Okay, well, what about the times when you're not trying to be fruitful?
You're not trying to multiply.
You're not trying to multiply. You're just trying to climb that tree.
Oh!
Like, what? Like, there's so much that's left out, and
there's just not much discussion about it at all. There's not any really, like, education. There's no nothing. I mean, I remember hearing, it's bad, don't do it.
Yeah, we'll just go ahead and put our parents on blast here. Mom, Dad, I'm so sorry. We love you. We would never try to shame you, except for this.
This was really bad.
My sex conversation with my parents, I think it was just with my mom, and she said, God said no. The Bible said no, don't do it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I vaguely remember that. I think that's what it was. She was like,
that was mine.
God said
bad,
no, don't do it.
It's bad, don't do it. I was like,
and I was like,
okay.
I gotta know why person, and I'm a hands-on learner. So when I was told no, and I wasn't given an explanation,
right,
I was like, why learn by doing? So I did.
Well, and that's a natural response, I feel like, as a young teenager. And that's why it's like, when you leave 100% to the imagination, a rebellious young teenager will go and find out. And that's the thing. It's like, to me, it's more important to be open and educate your child about all these many different things. It's like, let's talk about how sex is a wonderful and beautiful thing in the bonds of marriage, or in the relationship of marriage. Yeah. It is a beautiful thing. The reason why it can hurt you or not be good for you outside of marriage is because it is such a beautiful and wonderful, intimate thing that if you do part from that person, obviously it can be a very painful thing. Yeah. Somebody could, take advantage of you emotionally, and then you're left with a wound that is really hard to heal. You could get an STD. Like, there's no things that can happen. I mean, technically, whether you are in marriage or outside marriage. Yeah. But those are things that you can talk about. You can talk about. You can have an open discussion. And by having an open discussion does not mean that you're giving permission or endorsing your child to go out and have sex. Because we both learned whatever we learned, and we're taught whatever we were taught, but we still made these decisions. And that's the thing, is that you cannot force your child to not have sex. Yeah. We'll put that out there. You can't force them. You can teach them as much as you want, but you'll never find out. As long as you're not having an open discussion, you'll never know what your kid is actually up to. So let's go into... All right. I think we've already gotten off of our points out of order, but it's okay.
Let's go into how, if I was 15 again, how I would want a youth pastor or our parents to address this situation.
Yeah.
The first thing I wouldn't want them to do is to just tell me no and not give me any explanations.
Right.
I truly believe whether you're a rebellious spirit or not, if you're told no and then you're given no explanations as to why, you're going to go out and you're going to learn on your own because you have to. Learning about sex is important and it's part of life and you need to know about it.
It's a natural thing. It is something that majority of people in this world have those desires because it was a gift, in marriage, of course, disclaimer, but it's natural.
If you are someone who is charged with the responsibility of educating young people about sex, whether it be your children or your youth group or a church or any sort of gathering of young people, if that is something that you are charged with, go ahead and accept the fact that probably half of this group is already sexually active.
Bingo!
I cannot tell you how many chit-chats I have sat through about abstinence because that's really the only angle that any church or any person ever came to me or youth group. That was the angle, is abstinence. And I'm sitting next to the person that I'm currently sexually active with. Or I'm sitting next to my friends who I know for a fact are sexually active.
Right.
And we're all sitting here listening to this devotion and this talk about how we should never have sex and you should save yourself for marriage. And it's really hard to convince a bunch of teenagers to save themselves for marriage when they're already currently having sex.
Right.
With other members of your youth group. Like... You're missing your entire audience.
Exactly.
I feel like you're wasting your time, you're wasting their time, and you're missing a perfect opportunity to impart education. Now, I want to back up. As someone who has been a teacher for so many years, I understand that there are limitations to a teacher or a youth minister or whoever to not overstep a boundary of what these parents want you to talk about. However, I do feel like if you are in a faith-based arena, this is something that you need to get with the parents of your youth group and talk to them about and say, hey, look, we need to sit down and we need to discuss how we're going to approach this topic with our youth. Because this is important for them spiritually, physically, emotionally, mentally. And we're missing a big opportunity here to minister to them. And we need to have that talk and we need to all get on the same page because I know a lot of parents, being a cheer coach, being a teacher, I know a lot of parents who did not want to have these discussions with their girls who were like, I have no idea how to address this. And I think that's completely understandable because when you're looking at your child, your little girl, your daughter, whatever, you're like, I just want to protect her. I just don't want her to do anything at all that could ever hurt her. So it's very hard to detach and look at the situation from a non-biased perspective and just boil it down to facts. And that leads me into my next point is that you need to make peace with the fact and just assume that half of your group is already sexually active. And you also need to understand that not every member of your congregation, your youth group, your team, your kids, whoever, do not come from a faith-based background. So many kids that are in youth group, they're in youth group looking for connection and looking for family and looking for friendship and support and guidance. And they don't always grow up in church. They don't have a theology background. They don't have parents who are Christian. Sometimes members of your youth group, that child is the only Christian in their household. So when you come at this 14, 15, 16-year-old girl who does not have a theology background, she is not raised in a faith-based home, she's the only church-involved person in her home, and you're like, your body is sanctified, and it's God's body, and it's for your future husband, and like you're coming at her with these very abstract concepts that she, as a 14, 15, 16-year-old girl, cannot wrap her head around. The scarier thing is, though, when she is sexually active and you tell her her body is for her future husband, and she truly believes she's going to marry that little pimple-faced boy. So she's like, I might as well give myself to him.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to marry him anyways.
Yeah.
So I really, truly feel like where we're messing up is we're only focusing on the spiritual aspect and the scripture and this purity until you're married and everything. And I really think you need both approaches. You need the spiritual aspect, because I was talking on the phone with Mom this morning about this episode because I was trying to get her perspective on things.
Yeah.
And I was saying that the ultimate goal as the church is to protect.
Exactly.
Is to protect.
So glad you said
and
that.
what I was saying, the angle I was coming from is we need to focus on their physical protection first. And like, you need to understand you can be taken advantage of, or you can contract something that could mess with your fertility. Like, it could mess with your body. It could be something that you cannot, heal from.
Right.
Or, you could end up pregnant, which of course, not shaming that at all, but that does alter your life for the rest of your life at a very young age. It puts a very young body through a very traumatic experience. And so I was saying we need to focus on the scientific facts, how premarital sex at a young age affects a young woman emotionally, psychologically, physically, and worry about their physical protection. And Mom spoke up and she said, well, don't forget that everything biblical and scripture-wise is meant to protect them spiritually, to protect their soul and their heart and their spirit. And I said, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
So what we need to do is we need to talk openly with these young women. And we're saying young women over and over again because we are women. And neither one of us can speak on this topic from a young man's perspective.
Right.
If you did grow up in the church and you're a guy and you have an interesting perspective on this, please message one of us on Facebook or Instagram and just give us your thoughts on this, because we have a very limited viewpoint of this. It's just the female perspective.
Right.
And I really think that if you equip these young women with the spiritual side of God did create you and your body, and it is a temple, and it is so beautiful, and your sexual intimacy is so precious, and that you're guarding it not for your future husband. You're not guarding your body for this fictitious man in your future.
Right.
You're guarding it for yourself.
Right.
Because I hate to say this, but it's something you can't get back. That connection that you're making with these guys at this young age. You can't break that connection because it's there and you can't go back on it. And when you get older and you do get married, I don't regret anything I did in my teenage years and in my past before I met Jordan and we started dating. But when we got married, there was a little bit, I did kind of grieve my sexual purity. And I hate to use the word purity, but like the level of intimacy that you gain with a spouse that cares about your pleasure and your safety and your connection, because that's what it is. It is this, you're connecting on such an emotional level that you're like, physically, I have to connect with you in the most intense way.
Right.
And that is sex.
Right.
And I wish that I could have experienced that for the first time with my husband.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah.
Because that connection is completely unmatched.
Right.
And if you're going to do it, you might as well do it well. And
but that's the whole point, is that it is supposed, like you're saying, it is supposed to be this beautiful, wonderful, this most profound connection with somebody. It is supposed to be good. It is supposed to be beautiful and wonderful and all the adjectives that you can use. But
I think if you really come at from a spiritual perspective and you are talking about preserving the beauty of that for themselves, not for a future man.
Right.
And you also, equip them with sexual education on their body, on STDs, on pregnancy, on when they're ovulating, on their anatomy,
Right.
on the psychological connection they're going to have
Yeah.
with this young man that could break up with you next week
Yeah.
and be sleeping with someone else. And you have to sit next to that person still, and you have to go to school, and you have to process that. And on top of everything else that you're going through and all the hormone changes you're experiencing, you're also experiencing that level of heartbreak
Right.
at such a young age.
Right.
And it is just, it's heartbreaking. It
Yeah.
really is. And I think that's where we're dropping the ball as a church, is we're only coming from the abstinence perspective.
Right.
And it's not fair.
Yeah.
You're putting your young women at a complete disadvantage. Like, they're not dumb.
Right.
You educating them on sex is not going to make them go out and have sex.
Right.
Honestly, if I knew more about childbirth, I probably would kept my legs closed. I'm not going to lie. I'm 29. Giving birth to Fox completely traumatized me. I almost asked my doctor to just keep sewing me up. Like, just finish it off, doc, and don't let anything else come out of there. So if you equip these young women to be educated, they'll know what they're getting into. And they can make that decision for themselves of, physically, I know I'm not ready to take that on. So I'm going to guard myself.
Right.
Physically.
Well, and I know you were saying earlier, kind of, I was so excited when you said this. I was like, I can't wait to say what I want to say. But talking about, like, mom saying stuff about protecting yourself spiritually versus, and then you were saying something about protecting yourself physically. I often feel like the older I've gotten, the more I have learned how intertwined those two aspects are.
Yeah.
And it's like, yes, you could just say, oh, you're protecting yourself spiritually by not doing this. And I look at it as, yes, that is true. But at the same time, you want to protect yourself. God wants you to protect yourself because of the physical consequences that can occur. It's like, I mean, yes, there is such an emotional and spiritual, response when having sex outside of marriage. And it's because it takes a physical toll to some degree. And so it's like, just claiming, there's just a spiritual consequence. It's like, no, but there is physical consequences or side effects or whatever you want to call it. Like, they are intertwined.
Yeah.
And of course, God wants us to protect ourselves because of these physical things that can happen.
Yeah.
And so it's like, if you're going to say you need to protect yourself spiritually, it's like, remember that God also does want us to protect ourselves physically.
Yeah.
Like, they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
You can't have one really without the other.
It's not a separated conversation. If you're going to talk about abstinence, you have to talk about the other.
Right.
They have to know both sides. And,
Exactly.
And in another season of my life, I've told Jordan this so many times, I will be a family health teacher. Like, teaching sexual health will be my job at some point in my life. I know there will be a season where that happens because I'm so passionate about, oh my God, I'm tearing up.
Don't cry.
I'm a baddie, not a Saudi. Okay, I'm back. I am so passionate about it.
Yeah.
Because I was told, and I know.
Don't look at me like that. You're going to make me cry.
Keep it together, man.
Stop.
What movie is that from? Anyways. Oh my God, I lost my train of thought.
You were told. You said something.
I was told that you lose value
Oh, for sure.
once you have sex
Not
with someone.
agreeing. Just that
We've
that's
been told
said.
that.
Yeah.
That you lose value
Yeah.
once you've had sex.
Yeah.
And it puts a very superficial value on a young woman
Exactly.
to say, oh, well, once you have sex, you're no longer valuable. Because going back to knowing your audience, there are so many young women who are sexually abused by members of their family, by older young men who have taken advantage of a young woman. If she walks into this church and your conversation on sex is, what were you? I know you want to bring it up. What is it? The analogy, the physical lesson.
Oh,
the object
about
lesson.
I've seen, and I have, what I'm about to say, I've also heard from other people on like social media
Yeah.
who are now no longer a part of the church because they heard some of these very intense things about sex and it just completely turned them away from the church. But things about like putting a Hershey's Kiss in your mouth and then taking it back out and like asking the next person, oh, you don't want to put that in your mouth because it's nasty, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, sex is supposed to be this most wonderful, beautiful, magical thing, you know? And doing it, it's kind of like your virginity as a young girl, that is not the most valuable thing that you have.
Yeah. You're a person. You have
exactly.
value outside of your sexual purity.
Exactly.
I'm going to say that again.
Say it again.
You have value as a young woman outside of your sexual purity.
Boom. Mic drop. But,
actually not, because these are new.
Yeah, we're not going to drop these. But when you teach that to a young girl, right? And you tell her that her value is based on basically her virginity, which is such a social construct. But you're teaching her that, like, if that's the most valuable thing you have, right? That when it's gone, you have no value.
Left.
And so many girls will be like, well, I've already started. I no longer have any value. I might as well keep going.
Yeah.
Because I have nothing else to offer. You know, I've already done the deed. It's done. I might as well keep going.
Yeah.
And it's such a negative thing, especially for girls growing up. Their self-esteem, their confidence, their boundaries with relationship and stuff. It's like, well, if I were done, I might as well keep doing it with this boyfriend.
If I'm already bound for hell, if I'm already worth
this
nothing.
boyfriend, I mean, I should just do it with anybody and everybody because it doesn't matter anymore. When you teach a young girl that is all that she has to offer, how low of worth are you giving her?
Yeah.
That this one instance or this one part of life, that's all you have to offer me. Girl, stop lying. Stop lying. Is it a beautiful thing to be able to give to somebody? Yes, of course it is. It's a magical moment between two people.
Yeah.
But it's mostly, honestly, centered around the women. It's centered around young girls and their virginity. Now, once again, like we said before, we don't know what it was like for boys and what they've heard. But for the most part, and what I've gathered from, you know, people on social media is that it's centered around the young woman.
Yeah.
And her virginity and her sexual deeds and all this kind of stuff. That's the most promiscuous thing, whatever. You know what I mean.
To backtrack a little.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Hey,
we're too far ahead.
We're passionate about this. We're gonna ramble a little bit. We said we were gonna be super organized. Bear with us. When you have those young women that walk into a room that have been taken advantage of or that have been abused, and your only point of view is waiting to have sex,
right?
Being a virgin,
right?
Being pure, not having value. If you're not, I actually sat through a young woman's talk where we had to pass around the Hershey's Kiss. They unwrapped the Hershey Kiss and they passed it around.
Hate that.
And the Hershey Kiss, of course, represented your body and
your worth,
everyone
your value.
touching it and passing it around. And they were like, now who wants this? Everyone's touched it. And it's like, you know, if you had dipped all our hands in something weird and we all touched that and then passed it around, you could have had a really good object lesson for sexually transmitted disease,
right? For
health, because that is how STDs work. That's how they're transmitted. It would have been a great object hands-on lesson with a great visual.
Yeah.
But saying that represented our worth and our value and that no one would want us after that.
Right. That's
was
terrible.
Heartbreaking.
That
it was heartbreaking
terrible.
because I was already sexually active at that point.
Right.
And I was already sleeping with someone.
Yeah.
And to sit there in this live, laugh, love Jesus environment where I'm being told, oh, I no longer have any value.
Yeah.
It was
You're
heartbreaking.
Nasty. Nobody's going to want to touch you.
I'm nasty. Nobody wants to touch me.
The thoughts that go on in your head. I mean, that's what they're basically saying.
It's horrible. And so going back to knowing your audience is so important because, like, you have to stop being naive.
Right.
Like, if you're charged with someone's spiritual guidance, you have to stop living under a rock. And you have to accept the fact that these young people that you're talking to and mentoring to are probably sexually active.
Yeah.
The other point is, please be honest with them
Yeah.
If a female youth minister or just someone that was involved in church had been honest with me, or the young women in youth at all, like as a group, would have just been honest and said, I had sex before marriage, and this is how it affected me.
Yeah.
Number one, my respect for that woman, straight through the roof. My trust in that woman and how I would feel so safe talking to her, 100%. I would feel so connected to her because I'm like, wow, we've made similar choices.
Right.
And she would be a physical representation of making those choices and still being a person of value, because I'm looking up to her right now. So she hasn't lost her value as a person.
Right.
Be honest with them.
Yeah.
Like, I hope there's someone listening now that, you know, is learning from this in some way and doesn't feel so alone and is going to leave from listening to this podcast and feel more positive about their experiences, because I'm not even going to call them mistakes, because that gives such a negative connotation to it. You make the decisions that you make, and I made the decisions that I made.
Right.
And I honestly would not change them because I am now so passionate about this topic.
Right.
And I really feel like having made those decisions gives me the opportunity to have those open, honest conversations with young women one day, being like, I didn't wait till I was married. My husband is not the only person I have been intimate with in that way. And I think that's going to be important for reaching young women at some point in my life. I know there will be a season for that, where that testimony
probably hits home for a few.
I'm not going to cry. I'm about it.
Don't cry.
Did you remember how bad I am? Yes. Okay.
Baddie, not a saddie.
I know that will come into play one day.
Right.
Sharing my testimony about that. The next thing we're going to talk about is, if you're a young woman and you are not sexually active yet, but it's on your mind. If you are a young woman who is currently sexually active and you're not sure if it's something that you want to continue doing, I want you to know, number one, it's okay for you to want to have sex if you have not started having sex.
Right.
It's okay to want that. It's a physical, biological action.
Right.
Okay? It's hormonally driven.
Exactly.
If you are currently having sex and you're not sure you want to continue, you can stop, and it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. You're not less of a woman. You're not less valued because you are having sex.
You don't not love your boyfriend.
You
or
don't
whoever.
not love your boyfriend. And let me tell you this right now. If you are with someone and you don't want to continue having sex and you have that conversation with him, or if you're a young man listening to her or whatever, and they're unhappy with you and they're like, well, I don't want to be with you anymore, they're not worth your time.
Bye.
Because being on the same page physically when it comes to your sex life is so, so, so important.
Right.
And if that person cannot accept that you don't want to be sexually active anymore, then that's not okay. And you need to take a step back from them, and you need to get some space from them and reevaluate what you're wanting in a boyfriend or a girlfriend.
Protect yourself.
You need to protect yourself, yeah. The other thing is, and this is going to feel a little uncomfy, but
okay. No shame, babes. No shame.
Sex at 15, 16, 17 or whatever is nowhere near what sex with a committed life partner is like.
Right.
Because you are going to be, number one, so in love, so committed.
Right.
You're going to be thinking about their pleasure. They're going to be thinking about your pleasure.
Right.
And I'm telling you, if it's not good and it's not pleasurable, then babe, why are we doing it?
Right.
Why are we doing it? Because yes, sex is meant for, you know, being fruitful and multiplying and having children. Yes, sex is meant for connection, but sex is also meant for physical pleasure.
Right.
And if it's not good sex,
what's the point?
I feel like we're playing with fire for no reason. Like you're just getting burned for nothing.
Right. Exactly.
And you want a partner who is thinking about you all day and is going crazy all day thinking about how they are going to please you and how that's going to deepen your connection with them.
Exactly.
And that 16-year-old boy is thinking about football practice. He is thinking about the weekend. He's thinking about his vape. He's thinking...
Not the vape.
Not the vape. Like, I just want you to know that the level of intimacy that you get with a committed partner who truly cares about you and your body and your pleasure and your connection, it's so worth it. And it's something so beautiful, and it's something to look forward to. The connection that, you know, you have with your spouse is completely unmatched.
Right.
To anyone else that you're sexually active with or that you were physical with at any point.
Yeah.
And I really feel like if someone had sat me down and said, girlfriend, it ain't worth it.
Right.
It's not worth it. The teenage PP is not worth it. Okay, girl? You just wait. You just wait. Till you got a man. A man. I really wish someone had done that because I would have said, oh, okay. All right, cool.
You might not would have listened. Who knows? But
I really, truly feel like if a woman had sat me down and told me her story and been like, look, I get it. I've been there.
Right.
You know, I was sexually active before I got married, or I'm sexually active before my serious relationship. It gives so much validity to what you're saying. I cannot express to you the hollowness of someone talking about premarital sex who did not have premarital sex. Like, there is a spiritual space for sinners. Like, your sin, I don't want to say it gives you credibility, but
relatability, though.
Relatability. Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah.
There is a lot to be said for talking about a topic that you actually have experience with.
Right.
And being a physical representation of, you do get past it, you do get through it, you do still have value, you can move on, you can change.
Yeah.
It's really hard to sit and listen to someone talking about sexual purity when you don't know what their past was like, or if you do know that they did save themselves for marriage.
Yeah.
If you're a young person who didn't.
Yeah.
So there is space in that spiritual arena for people who have made those decisions. And I mean, there's room for the people that did save themselves for marriage. I think that's beautiful and it's wonderful. And 29 years old, married with a baby, I truly wish I had, because that deep connection that I have with Jordan is completely unmatched.
Yeah.
But I am so thankful that I do have the background to speak on this with young women.
Right.
And I can relate to them and I can really understand what they're going through, you know, to an extent. You know, there are things that I'm sure I wouldn't be able to relate to.
Right.
And I do hope that in some season of my life that does happen where I get to use that testimony and share it. Yeah. Maybe that's what I'm doing right now.
I think it is. I think that's what we're doing right now.
And Cameron wanted to cover something as well.
I did want to bring up that while we were at a church, obviously our mom was here on one of the last episodes, and I do want to give her a little bit of credit that she did talk a lot about, you know, protecting your heart and protecting yourself, and just kind of like some of the things that we've been talking about today, just protecting yourself, you know, emotionally. I think was her biggest thing that she wanted to reach across to us. And at the time, I just remember thinking to myself, holding so fast to not, you know, ever cross those boundaries, to not ever allow myself to enter into that type of relationship. And I am very glad for the conversations that she had when they were the good ones about protecting yourself and just protecting yourself. I know I'm being kind of redundant.
I know her phrase was guard your heart.
Yeah, exactly. Guard your heart. And I did that because technically I did save myself for my husband. So it's funny that we're kind of on, you know, a little bit of different spots on the spectrum with it. And so I do know how wonderful it is to be with, obviously we both know how wonderful it is to be with, you know, your husband or whatever. But I do think about how, like, wow, this is so special. And I am so glad that I've only gotten to experience this with him.
Yeah.
Because like you said, it is such a beautiful and special connection that you have with that person.
Yeah.
And so I do want to say shout out to Mom.
Yeah.
Thank you for those good conversations
We
that you
shamed
did
you
have.
earlier, but
Yeah.
we are now shining a light on the positive. I was not involved in those conversations. I wasn't at Ebenezer during that time. So I was not aware that those conversations took place. So Kameron is here shining a light.
It does go to show, you know, like, how you can change the conversations that you have with youth and everything. Because obviously at the time
I got 0.
Whatever conversations you did or didn't have, you know, and then how, you know, she kind of changed her tune a little bit, understanding her audience a little bit more. So it's something that's like, even if you feel like, you know, if you're a leader or whatever and you feel like you've been having the more negative conversations, you can't always change how you are talking and discussing this with your youth. You can change how you discuss these things and present these to your youth.
And it's okay to sit down with your youth group or with your teenagers and say, hey, we dropped the ball.
Yeah.
We want to be honest with you. We now know that there's another angle that we need to come at this with. Or even talk to your youth in smaller groups and just ask them, what questions do you have?
Yeah.
What do you need to know? What's going on in your friend circle that you're concerned about or that you do want to talk about? It's not weird. It's not lame. They're teenagers. They might roll their eyes, but I guarantee you the next day or two, you're going to get a text message from one of them, or someone's wife is going to get a text message from one of them saying, hey, I actually do have a few questions.
Yeah.
Hey, can we sit down and talk about this?
Yeah.
I do want to share a few tips for young women, if you are trying, like you said earlier, boundaries and like trying to make sure that you're keeping yourself out of a situation where things could lead to that. My biggest piece of advice, this is such a good piece of advice. Don't worry about dating.
Okay.
Don't worry about it. You have the rest of your life to cry over a boy. Okay, I'm just gonna tell you this. This is no hate to the guys. They don't get any smarter till they're like 25. Okay,
everybody's prefrontal lobe or whatever has finally developed.
Their prefrontal lobe is it's lagging, my friends. Focus on, as a 29-year-old woman, I'm an elder millennial. I feel like.
Oh my gosh.
I'm so old. I'm ancient. I'm decrepit. Here is some advice. Focus on your friends. Have so much fun. Boys are so boring. They're so boring. It's the same song and dance. If you have a boyfriend and you love him, that's wonderful. I'm so happy for you. But if you don't have a boyfriend and you're looking at all your friends that have boyfriends and you're feeling left out.
Oh, yes. Let me speak on that. Let me speak on that whenever you want to.
Well, let's preface this with, I was the sister that always had a boyfriend.
Right.
I always had a boyfriend. Rolodex. Kameron. I don't know why. I'm sure there's some psychological issues there. Kameron, and people in my friend group all had boyfriends. Like a lot of the friends in my friend group, they were long-term boyfriends, like 1, 2, 3 years long. And so it felt very weird to not have a boyfriend all the time. And I'm not going to say that there was pressure behind that, but like...
It's like a quiet pressure.
Yeah,
nobody's
it's
like
subtle.
actually saying it.
But you don't want to be the one that's left out. You don't want to be the one that everyone's going to the party with their boyfriend and their girlfriend, and you're just there, and everybody else is making out around the bonfire, and you're just like nursing my Dr. Pepper. It wasn't a Dr. Pepper. Focus on yourself.
Yeah.
And your friends.
For sure.
And because you're never going to get your teenagers back. You're never going to get them back. And they're so much fun. They really, really are. And you have the whole rest of your life to deal with boys and sex and all the drama that surrounds that.
Yeah.
And if I could just give any advice, that is what my advice would be to just save the headache.
Yeah.
Enjoy your life. Enjoy girlhood. Because it is so fleeting. It truly is. Because the next day you wake up and you're turning 30 and you got a baby and a husband. and the baby's peeing on the wall every time you change his diaper. That's just my piece of advice is to just be young and be happy and have friends and surround yourself with your girlfriends and go out and have a good time. And just don't even waste your energy and your emotions on dating. Yeah. If you could avoid dating, you could probably avoid the majority of this issue. You really could.
No, for sure.
Not saying that you have to be dating someone to be sleeping with them, but if you just don't even entertain the idea, then, you're not even going to put yourself there. Yeah. That's my biggest tip is just avoid the boys. Just go have fun with your friends and enjoy life. Get them degrees. Yeah. Then you can mess around with boys. Yeah. You know what I mean?
But coming from somebody who had just such an opposite dating history or lack thereof for myself, I didn't really... Angel was really my
your first boyfriend.
One and only true boyfriend. Of course, there was crushes throughout school. There was talking.
Situationships.
Love that, talking. But I truly was like, if I can't see myself marrying them, there is no point in me dating them. Yeah. There is no, and not to say he's 17 in my class, we're not going to get married, so I'm not even going to entertain him. But it's if you don't have those core values lined up with somebody, there's no point in even wasting your emotions on dating that person. Yeah. And then to especially go and be physical with them, there's no point to it. Yeah. But there was, for me, all my friends around me always have boyfriends. They were, definitely being physical and everything. And not to shame them or anything by any means, but I did feel so different. I felt so just
like the odd man out.
Yeah, I just felt, and sometimes I definitely felt really alone, and not by any actions. Nobody did anything to make me feel that way necessarily, but I did feel that way because I was the one that wasn't dating, wasn't, doing this or that. And so if you are that young girl, it is okay to not be dating when you're in high school or you're in college even. Whenever. You can live your own life, live your best life, take care of yourself, prioritize yourself. These are the years that you won't ever get back, like you said. And it's okay because you will find your special somebody. I felt like I was alone for so long and it felt lonely. If you are alone, you're going to feel lonely. That's kind of how it is. But it's okay. It's okay to be alone. It's okay to take care of yourself. It's okay because you don't have all the drama, like you're saying. And it's just funny to see the two different perspectives, but to kind of come to the same conclusion. It's you can go out there and experience all kinds of things and have heartbreaks and all that kind of stuff. But you don't have to if you really don't want to. It's okay to be alone. It's okay to not have a boyfriend. It's perfectly fine. There's plenty of people out there who are just like me and, married their first and only boyfriend and everything. And that's totally fine.
I do want to make a disclaimer here real quick. I do know of one couple that were high school sweethearts. And they have been together for years and years and years, and they are so precious, and they have children now, and they've built this beautiful life together. So what we're saying here, what I was saying specifically, I'm not saying that love that you experience in your teenage years is not validated and not, just as true and as deep as when you are older. I wanted to backtrack on that because I do know beautiful couples that fell in love when they were teenagers. Yeah. Our parents did. The couple that I'm talking about, they're so cute. They fell in love, I think, in high school and maybe even middle school. And they've been together since then, and they have beautiful children and have a beautiful life together. So I do want to backtrack on that. And I don't want anyone listening to think that your young love is not true. Right. Because you're feeling those feelings, and that is an experience that you're having. Right. The love that I felt for people in my teenage years was there. It was real. I was loving. When you're a teenager and you're in love with someone, you're loving them with all the background knowledge that you have on love. Right. And it is different when you are older and you are married. That love is different from when you were a teenager, but it's not any less valid. It's not any less important.
Yeah.
So with all that being said, avoid the dating, have fun with your friends, save boys for when you're older. I didn't want to discredit that young love because it is beautiful. And I did learn things about myself by being in love with people when I was a teenager.
Right.
And have continued to learn things about myself as an adult.
Yeah.
And love. But I just didn't want to discredit that because this specific couple popped in my mind and I think they're so beautiful and so sweet.
No, I think it's more, we're just saying, like, if you don't have anybody in mind, if you don't genuinely like somebody, don't worry about it. Don't feel the pressure to date just to date.
Yeah.
Just to say you have a boyfriend, to have a boyfriend, that's kind of what we were talking about there.
To wrap up this episode, I just want to review real quick the teacher and me. I just want to, go down these bullet points. Talk to the young people in your life, your children, your youth, your church, whoever. Educate them spiritually. Educate them on the physical aspect of sex.
Yes.
The emotional intensity of sex. The possible negative physical consequences of sex.
Yeah.
And the level of intimacy that sex has.
Yeah.
Don't frame sex as a bad thing because as a church, sex is sanctified within marriage. And it is very hard for young people to make that shift from this is very shameful to something very beautiful.
Right.
Understand that the majority of your youth group are probably already active.
Yeah.
And shaming them and devaluing them as a person is not going to get you anywhere.
Preach.
Having your young people be educated is not going to make them go out and have sex. We honestly believe that if you educate them on all fronts, they would probably be more likely to abstain or to stop having sex.
Right.
Because they're educated on every angle. Your value as a young woman does not lie in your virginity, in your sexual purity. I hate that word. It doesn't.
Preach. Amen.
You have value despite the fact being sexually active or not being sexually active.
Right.
God loves you despite the decisions that you've made. And we love you. And we really hope that you took something away from this podcast. And we hope that this podcast and this episode specifically could be shared and really help someone and be a testimony.
Yeah.
All right.
Stop. You about to make me cry.
I know I'm looking into your eyes and they're all misty-eyed.
They're glassy.
They're glassy. Get it together, man. Monsters, Inc. That's where it's from.
Oh, yeah.
We love you guys, and we'll see you back on the next episode.
Bye.
I think that went well.
I think we did really good.
I think we did really good, too.
I think we did good.
I think we did better.
I think we did good.
Get your phone out and do Snapchat.